Greetings, Dr. Dominique here, and I wanted to provide some clarity and reaction to Federal Chairman Powell's announcement. Now, I will say, and this is really for people who are like, I don't know what that stuff means. Yeah, why should I care about the federal chairman of the Federal Reserve? Announcement. Why should I care, and how does that impact me? I know I asked those questions, and again, I studied economics in college, so it's my training theoretically. But you want to know trickle down to me as the average consumer living in America, and that's what I'm here to do. But there's also some things here that are just interesting to me because I like econ, so this stuff really does fascinate me. Nevertheless, I want to bring some notes. And I'll just say this. It is so interesting that in financial services in particular, and maybe this is across the board in any industry, but financial services in particular, it's like everybody wants to be the smartest person in the room, right? So everybody's got to ask a question. But those questions are so stupid because the man just told you he doesn't know. And then you get another question like, well, how much are you going to raise interest rates by? We don't know. He just said that. Okay, well, do you think the rate increases will be higher than normal? We don't know. So I just get frustrated after a while with listening to the pundits ask questions that he already told you he don't know. But I understand everybody's got to ask a question and make sure their face pops up on the screen and their company gets a little play. So I understand it, but it is quite frustrating for those of us who are listening to the announcement and just want to get on with it. Nevertheless, here I am. All right, so notes from the Fed Chairman Powell's announcement. I took away that they're going to keep rates at 0 for now, but will be increasing rates over time. That is important. They're going to continue to buy assets. So asset purchasing will continue through March. And then they're going to begin to raise the rates, right? So that's their goal. That's their strategy. They're very focused on the fact that the labor market is strong. Now, depending upon what you think about that, you may say, well, what makes the labor market strong? And there's a few factors, and I'll go into a bit more detail. However, the Fed is highly focused on the fact that the labor market is strong and there has been growth. So that's some good news. That's some positivity to leverage. And I think that's where his focus is, given it's like, all right, can we have some silver lining here, right? The silver lining is that the labor market is strong, but there's still some complications there. And then inflation, highly concerned about inflation. And the concern there is simply that it will be persistent, meaning it's going to keep being high. And then the question becomes, well, how do we lower it? And well, let me not say, because you may not know. Monetary policy is one tool to regulate the economy. The other tool is fiscal policy. Monetary policy is managed by the Feds, Federal Reserve. And so they control that area, whereas fiscal policy is an area that's managed by the government. Now, they're both government, essentially, right? But we're talking taxation. When we talk fiscal policy, we're more talking about taxation to the consumer, right? And monetary policy is about managing interest rates amongst institutions. So if you think about it in domains, right? You've got the domain of the institutions and you got the domain of the people. Monetary policy, domain of the institutions. Fiscal policy, domain of the people. So, and the implications that impact us. So that's a simple way to think about it. And then the question kept coming up about the balance sheet. Well, we know the Fed has a very large balance sheet because they've been purchasing assets to manage the economy. So the question then becomes, well, what are you going to do about it? And he's basically like, listen, We're going to get to that, and we're managing it behind the scenes. This is kind of new for us too. So we want to stay ready, basically. He's like, if we stay ready, we ain't got to get ready. And I get that, because you don't know what's going to happen. That's why I get so frustrated with these questions that are so specific. And you're like, yo, we don't know. We're in an unprecedented economic time. Yeah, your question is relevant, but we don't know. So the answer is we don't know. You can figure that out. But again, they got to ask, so whatever. But it's just like, we don't know. So the question then becomes to the chairman, how are we going to reduce the balance sheet? What does that look like? And he's like, listen, we just want to stay humble and nimble. And I could appreciate that response, because it basically says we're going to be positioned to do what we need to do. We don't know what we're going to do. That's what I took away from it. What we do know is that we're going to continue to purchase assets through March. We're going to raise the rates probably after March. And then we're going to go from there. So see you at the next meeting. That's what I took away from that. But they just kept asking these questions. And it's like, the answer is, I don't know. And he was very eloquent about finding various ways to say, I don't know. So I could appreciate his approach. So now let's talk about some of the details, because this is what really got me. I was like, oh, okay. I like explaining this stuff once it makes sense to me. So the rate. Why is there so much hype about the rate? Well, we're talking about the federal funds rate. Now, this is a rate that, in its most simple form, banks borrow money, like we borrow money, right? The consumer borrows money from the bank. Well, banks borrow money from other banks and from the Federal Reserve. There is a rate that they get that's different than the rate that we get. They get what's called the federal funds rate. And that is the rate that is used to borrow money between the institutions. Okay, so that's why this rate is so important, because those big, powerful billion-dollar brands and institutions are borrowing money based on this rate. So they want to know what's going on. Is it going to be high? Is it going to be low? How much is it going to cost us to borrow money? The same way when you're ready to purchase a car, buy a home, or you have a credit card, you're looking at that rate. Same exact thing. So the federal funds rate impacts us as consumers once it trickles all the way down to the cost of borrowing. When you're ready to apply for some credit because you don't have the cash, so you need to borrow, that federal funds rate works its way into the calculations of the institution that you're borrowing from. And then it's presented to you on the dotted line. Okay. And so that's how this impacts you. It's still very high level, but it trickles its way down to your actual capacity to borrow and the cost it's going to cost you to borrow. So that's the first thing. That's why you should care. So make it even more specific. I know a really great example because everybody understands purchasing a home. So the real estate industry sees this and feels it. And those who are in the process of either considering purchasing or selling a home, they're thinking about this, because if you want to purchase a home, what we've been seeing is right now, the real estate market is up. So many people have purchased homes right now because the interest rates were so low. Right? So now the Fed is saying, hey, we're going to be hiking rates later on. So now that's going to create a trickle down effect to industries like real estate, where you're ready to purchase a home maybe in the next few years. Well, you're going to be purchasing at a much higher rate than what you're seeing right now. And it is what it is, because I have the position that there's no good or bad economy as much as it is what side of the economy you're on, because a lot of people did very well over the past few years and made a lot of money, and more billionaires were created. Do you think it was a bad economy for them? They would not say so. So I believe it depends on what side of the economy you fall on for it to be bad or good. All right, so that's one example as to how this kind of stuff matters and how it trickles down to you. So then when there was a question, well, the chairman said his concern is around inflation because we are all noticing that things cost more, right? And when he named the three areas, I'm sorry, my neighbors, they just, I don't know, never mind. Okay, you can hear me better now. Thank you. The concern with inflation is in three major areas known as essentials. And you're going to resonate with this the minute I say them: food, housing, transportation. We're all feeling food increases, housing increases, transportation increases in terms of cost. It's costing you more to shop. It's costing you more to get around. It's costing you more to pay rent or to purchase a home. So that's how we feel it on an everyday basis. This inflation hike is impacting those from most vulnerable communities, lower income earners. And this is, going back to how our industry does, the language can be so high level sometimes. You're like, what does that mean? So the language used to describe the low income earners, which was one language, but he also said those in the lowest percentile or the lowest quartile, and then the non-supervisory workers. I have my notes here because I have to take notes. Non-supervisory workers. So you take that to mean what you take it to mean, but I take it to mean everybody who ain't got a corporate job, right? If you ain't got a corporate job, you're not working salary, you working hourly, he's talking about you. And even those who are earning a salary, but a low salary, are feeling the impacts of inflation way more than those who are high income earners, right? Now, high income earners don't like inflation either because it's costing them more as well. The only thing is that they can weather that a lot better than those who have lower income, right? Or who have fixed incomes. Because, if you're on a fixed income, then you are really seeing the erosion of your dollar. Like your dollar doesn't buy what it used to buy. That's the power of inflation. When you can go somewhere and it costs you $1 today, but you go there in 30 days and now it's $1.07. That's inflation. Things have inflated. It's costing you more to buy the same thing. So we know that inflation impacts vulnerable communities, identify them as you wish, lower income owners, and lower net worth populations. That is a fact. And I could appreciate the Fed chairman just kind of saying like, it is what it is. Like, that's what happens with inflation. So here's what I took from that as a financial coach and consultant. We know that to be an economic fact. It's an economic truth that when inflation is high, those on lower income and who have lower net worth are going to feel it a lot more. And your ability to weather that storm is going to be jeopardized. You also are making you're making different types of decisions. Like this is where the rubber really meets the road for some households, and people have to decide, do I buy groceries or do I pay rent? Do I buy groceries or do I pay the electric bill? Like those decisions are being made right now, and those are tough decisions. So how do we position ourselves as consumers to be able to weather that storm? Well, this for me, and I will say it, and it's gonna sound like a broken record, you have got to adopt the principle of management. Management is the solution to your financial concerns, worries, problems. You may be thinking, I don't have enough to manage. You've got more than you could have. You've got more than you could have. You have to manage what you have so that you can see the opportunities to get more and then grow what you have. It's not sexy. I know. It's not, ooh, all new. Nope, it's rather old. And for those of us who are believers and kingdom citizens, we know that as a kingdom citizen, you are bound by a different set of understanding for managing your resources. And so it becomes even more important when you throw your faith into it, that you don't take this lightly. Like if you're not budgeting once a month on paper, because you don't budget in your head, budgeting is not in your head. If you're not doing that for whatever reason, I don't care if you earn enough or your bills are paid. If you're not putting it on paper, some kind of paper, whether it's your spreadsheet, your app, or literal paper like I do, you're not budgeting. And you should be, because it creates so much opportunity. And let me throw this at you. If the federal government budgets, why shouldn't you? I'm just saying. All right. So that's what I started to think. I'm so glad he highlighted the fact that inflation impacts three essentials, necessities: food, housing, transportation. That's something we all can relate to. No matter your income bracket, food, housing, and transportation are costing you more right now. So what can you do about it? You can become a better manager. Now, most people will say, I just need to make more money. That may be true. And you will not do right by making more money if you're not managing the money you already have. And managing doesn't just mean paying the bills, because that is something you can do without knowing much. You know your bill is due on the 12th. You know your bill is due on the 15th. So you try to make sure you have the money to pay it. But what about the things you don't see? What about the things you want? And what about exploring opportunities to increase the dollars without having to get another job? Right? So now we're talking lifestyle. So when we are seeing these announcements from our government people that we put in place, right? And you're like, well, how does that relate to me? I don't really know. I don't really care, whatever. You got to pay attention to stuff. If you hadn't been paying attention before and you don't really know what they're saying, that's okay. Still tune in, because subconsciously you're taking it in. And that matters. And you might be able to have a conversation with someone else just based upon what you took in a non-active way. But it really matters to our household budgets, because our essentials are being impacted. That's why this is important to you. So you should be taken away from this. Okay, they're going to be increasing interest rates in the next few months. So that means it's going to cost more to borrow money. Interest rates can go up on my credit card. If I'm thinking about refinancing, interest rates are going to go up. If I'm thinking about purchasing a home or a car or a big ticket item where I have to borrow the money, it's going to cost me more. So maybe I need to put a plan in place so that I am prepared for that and can still be profitable. So you heard those P's: plan, prepared, and profitable. We're not out here just making decisions. We need to slow down sometimes and let the numbers tell us what we can afford to do comfortably. Because if it comes back that maybe you shouldn't purchase that home in September, maybe you shouldn't think about moving in June, maybe you should keep your car for another 6 months, or consider the lease versus financing, like whatever, or not financing, but consider leasing versus the traditional financing, like paying to own it. Whatever that is for you in your situation, the point is to reevaluate where you stand, thinking about 6 months from now, thinking about 9 months from now. That is true planning. And if you don't know how to do that, holler at Reese Financial Services, because we offer financial coaching for folks to get their finances in order. I believe in order. So it's about order. And sometimes order will tell you to slow down, back up, hold on, wait, think about this. Don't do that. Do this instead. And then in X amount of time, you can move forward with that based on the numbers. Okay. So that was that. More of, there was something else that, the chairman mentioned. He talked a lot about maximum employment. I want to highlight this a bit, and price stability and goals. So in the world of economics, maximum employment just simply means getting unemployment as low as possible so that prices become stable. And given we're in a strong labor market, what we're seeing right now is that there are a lot of jobs. So that's a good thing that contributes to a strong labor market. But there are also a lot of people who are unemployed. So when you look at these ratios and you put one number over the other number, you're like, hey, what's happening here? It's a lot of jobs available, but it's still a lot of people without jobs. Why? Okay, why? And then we're going to talk about why. But what does that do? Now that's creating problems within the economy because companies can't get enough people to work. I can tell you how it's trickling down in my life, and then maybe you can see how it's trickling down in yours. For example, my son takes the school bus. And since school has been back in January, he hasn't had a consistent bus driver because there aren't enough people driving school buses. Why? Because a lot of people don't want to get vaccinated. COVID has direct implications to the labor market, right? Some people don't want to go back to work because they're still on unemployment and they just taking a break. And listen, I'm all for that because people need a break. You need to reset. You got to reset. So use this as a strategic break to reset. So now you can come back to the labor market stronger than where you were before. Like, don't come back and get the same exact job. Come back and level up. And if you're budgeting and looking at your budget and budgeting the unemployment income you've got, you're going to see what you need to be making. So this is an opportunity for you to level up, whether it's go back to school, take some online classes, get a vocational certificate, or if you're ready to shift careers, shift, because there are some careers that are going to take off. Also, speaking of careers, there is a shortage of nurses, which is why we feel the pressures from the hospitals, especially while COVID is still a real thing, and they're burnt out, right? So that's creating interesting dynamics within the labor market as well. So when we're seeing, and then here's another example. I went to get my son tested because he had to quarantine because another kid had COVID, so he had to come home. But we went to a testing site that should have been open. Guess why it wasn't open? Because they didn't have enough supplies. Now, why didn't they have enough supplies? Because there's a supply shortage. And the person apparently, people talk when stuff ain't right, people tell you what's going on. So it's like, yeah, we didn't have enough people to hire to do this part of the job. And so now we got to wait. We can't take walk-ins today. Come back tomorrow. It's like, okay, like you don't have enough people to work to get you the supplies. So that's slowing down your ability to test. Meanwhile, people need jobs, right? So you're like, well, how is this happening? There's a disconnect. The market is not a market because the buyer and the seller come together, you have a market. But there's sellers. Hey, we have jobs, but there's no buyers. The buyers is a shortage of buyers, and it trickles down in those ways. And now we feel the effects because of inflation, right? So now it's taken a lot to get stuff to our ports, and then off the barges and the cargo and the freights, and then it's taken a while to get to the grocery stores because there's nobody to drive the trucks. There's not enough truck drivers for local things because nobody wants to get vaccinated to take the job because of the mandates from the government, right? So you start to see all of these things impacting everything. And then we have inflation. And inflation, again, hits the vulnerable communities the hardest. So you've got to start thinking about how this impacts your financial house. And in these times, what measures you take to shore up your financial stability. Save more, save more. And as interest rates go up, now this is a whole nother video, but as interest rates go up, you can look forward to a slightly higher interest rate. Just slightly. It's not gonna get you rich. It's just what they might decide to give you. But you can expect to see some increases from 0.01 to maybe 0.03. That's what I'm talking about on the savings side. But you want to save more because things are going to cost you more. And so with rates going up, you want to be sure that you've got the cushion, the reserve, as I like to call it, the when I need it, I got it fund. Because who wants more emergency? So I don't like to call it an emergency fund. I like to call it the when I need it, I got it fund. You want to make sure that fund is getting as shored up as you can possibly get it. Okay. And one way to do that is to join the 52-week savings challenge. So let me go ahead and plug that. And you might be able to click some link around this video to join. It's a free challenge where we save small amounts every week of the year to then end up with over $1,000 at the end of the year. You can also go pro in this challenge. And this is the Reese Financial Services Master My Money way. Everybody don't do this, but we go pro, which basically means you can double or triple your weekly contributions. So at the end of the year, you'll end up with twice or 3 times the initial savings that you would have had. All right. So join the 52-week savings challenge. It is a great way to passively save money every week. And again, small amounts over time add up. And that's the power of this challenge. If you've never saved consistently, or you don't think you can afford to save, this challenge is for you. And if you are a saver and you don't have any problems with saving, then I would say join the challenge anyway and go 5 or 10 times pro in the challenge and really make it a challenge and see if you can save 5 times the amount every week. All right. So it's for everyone. And that's the idea. Like, no one is exempt. No one doesn't need it. No matter where you are financially, you can benefit from the 52-week savings challenge. So join us. I love the Fed chairman's language, humble and nimble. I think I might have said that, but we want to be humble and nimble, and you should be humble and nimble. Oh, thank you, Father. All of this translates to us. That's why I'm doing this video, because people don't realize that they should be caring about this stuff. So you don't tune in. You probably didn't even know it was happening today. It happened. Be humble, be nimble. Okay. Kendrick Lamar said it. Sit down and be humble. Sit down and budget. Sit down and look at your savings plan. Sit down and take a look at the investments you're not making. Sit down and think about what you can learn this year. Be nimble. Be ready to flex. Be ready to pivot. Be ready to take advantage of things. And if you have savings or capital sitting there waiting to take advantage of an opportunity, that is going to prove beneficial to you. But if you don't have any savings and you're not ready for any opportunities, guess what? It's going to be another year of you seeing opportunities go by because you're not ready for them. So be humble and be nimble. If they can be humble and nimble, or at least that's their instruction and their intention, then we follow their lead. And you may have heard this before. Follow the money. What the money is doing, if it's good for them, it's good for us. If it's good for Wells Fargo, it's good for us. If it's good for Citibank, Chase, and B of A, it's good for us. Where they put their money, we need to be putting our money. Follow the money. Okay. Risk. I love this question. So he kept saying, we want to manage the risks around the world. And then someone actually asked the question that made sense. What risk are you talking about? So here's some of the risk he referred to. Inflation, right? And what's the risk of inflation? That is going to continue. It's going to be persistent, as he said, and or get worse. COVID is still a real thing. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if more strands are going to come out. That's a risk. Supply chains. And then he mentioned specifically what's happening in China. So if you don't know what's happening in China, just go Google it. But we know we buy a lot of stuff from China. So it's harder to get stuff in right now. It's taking longer. That creates a hike in prices. So, and then you just have to go without your stuff when you really need it. You know what I'm saying? People need medicines, clothes, and different technologies. And then you've got the shortage of semiconductors. That's a supply chain issue. So, and semiconductors are in medical devices and technologies that we use on a daily basis, and all kinds of things that we don't even realize fuel and power our lifestyles. So these are risks to the economy. And then what's happening in Eastern Europe. So there's all these risks that the Fed is taking a look at. And they're like, all right, we need to make sure we have our eyes on all these different things as we're implementing policy. Okay. And then what does he want to see? He wants to see expansion. So what does that mean? That means when the economy is growing, that means people are working. That means people are making money. So, and he highlighted two things that are strong right now. Again, they're going to keep capitalizing and leveraging the idea that there's a strong labor market. Labor, meaning jobs are available. Wages have gone up in ways that we haven't seen in decades. Now, you might be like, yeah, but they still not enough. I know, I ain't going there. That's a whole nother video. But what we are saying is over time. So you got to realize these people in these positions, in these places, I'm pointing back here like they're back here. They look at things on the aggregate. Progress and success for economists is measured over an aggregate. So it's like, what can we say has happened over time? Like, we know what's happening right now, but let's zoom out. That's why it's called macro. Let's zoom out and get the big picture view. And when you get the big picture view, you can see, oh, over time, hourly wages have gone up. That's a good thing. But of course, when you zoom in, that's called micro. You're like, but it's still not enough. And people are still struggling with the essentials, food, housing, and transportation. So we still have work to do. But they're going to capitalize, promote that we're in a strong labor market. And you may be like, yeah, but I don't like none of the jobs that's out there because they don't pay enough. And you're absolutely right. So now you have to think more creatively about what that means for you, your lifestyle, and what you're going to do. But I believe that when you see more jobs available, like right now, you have leverage as a consumer. You have negotiating power, and you may be able to negotiate things that are important to you. If they won't negotiate the salary, then talk about time off, talk about flex benefits, talk about things that still matter to you, that are important to you. And they can only say no. So you can't miss nothing you never had. But this is your opportunity to start flexing your communication skills, your negotiating skills, and to think about the lifestyle holistically that you're leading and how your job impacts that. People always say, I don't have time. Okay, well, negotiate more time. Negotiate professional development. You want to go back to school? Negotiate that. Negotiate a class, negotiate something so that you feel like you're getting something from this outside of the hourly rate that still ain't enough. Okay. The question came up, how to lower inflation. And he's like, listen, that's the whole point. That's what we're trying to do. We want to get it down to our target of 2%. And so the way they do that is by getting people back to work, getting these supply issues taken care of, lowering. Well, I got confused. Hold on. The way we lower inflation is by bringing costs of stuff down. How do we do that? By everything else that we've just discussed, right? So getting people back to work, getting people prices that are reasonable, and that's impacted by supply. So all of these things are interrelated. And the question kept coming up, timing. When do we see that? We don't know. We don't know. So that's another reason why it's important for you as a consumer to manage your household finances, because they don't have answers for us. No one knows. Yet we're all in that boat together. We don't know. COVID could get worse. COVID could get substantially better. In either situation, it's going to matter. So there's no prediction around the timing. And that's it. Oh, no, it's not. One last thing. So he did say, we'll have to see what this looks like 2, 3, 4, 5-year period. That was important to me because it gives you an idea. And I just talked about timing, huh? it gives you an idea of really when you should be thinking about this whole situation being much better 5 years. And that also aligns with traditional economic policies. They can raise rates in March. You won't really start feeling that until September, October, November, December, January. These are lagging things. So when policy is implemented, it takes a while for it to take effect. And then it takes a while for you to feel it. So you have to remember that it's a fluid process, okay? It's a fluid process, and I hope this was helpful. Dr. Dominique, owner of Reese Financial Services, where I'm the chief financial coach and consultant. And any questions you have, shoot them my way. You can email me at dominique@reesefinancialservices.com. I'm on social media, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, but I'm not always active. So ping me, DM me. The best way to reach me is email. And I look forward to being a resource. And if you've got a perspective that hasn't been shared in this video, please feel free to add it to the comments. I love to engage you. All right. I hope this was helpful and that you took some notes and good information. All right. Peace.